Creating a high-quality video game that ticks all the boxes with fans, newcomers, and critics alike is not an easy task, and keeping them engaged enough to keep coming back and logging in is no small feat either. However, no one should ever underestimate just how passionately fan bases can feel about the games they love, and how far they're willing to go to play said games even after their time in the limelight has come to an end. Here are 10 old video games that are still being kept alive because of their active player bases. I'm Jess from WhatCulture, and here are 10 old video games kept alive by hardcore fans. Number 10, Mario Kart Wii. The Mario Kart series is one of those gaming franchises that will always boast a strong player base, no matter how old the titles get. The ultimate party game for groups of families and friends to lose their minds over, it's amazing how many have a copy of Mario Kart Wii lying around their place ready to pick up and play. The second best-selling game on the console that blew up in the late 2000s with 37.34 million sales, and later becoming the highest-selling game in the entire franchise. There's plenty to suggest that the game isn't even done yet either. Nintendo is still shipping out thousands of copies of this iconic title to retailers around the world, and sales of Mario Kart Wii are continuing to rise. On top of that, the game's legendary online modes have helped birth an active modding community of players who kept the game alive by creating new courses and porting over both classic and newer tracks from other titles in the franchise. Number 9, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas might just be the greatest game in a series known for producing plenty of groundbreaking and influential titles. Released back in 2004 as the 7th title in Rockstar's flagship franchise, San Andreas smashed sales records right across the world, becoming the PlayStation 2's highest-selling game ever, and has gone on to shift around 27.5 million copies all these years on. With its memorable storyline and colorful collection of characters, namely Big Smoke and the Grove Street Families gang, the game really earned its legendary status through its soundtrack, minigames, multiplayer modes, and dozens of ways in which role-playing could be integrated into any player's game. It's those last two factors that have helped San Andreas stay alive longer than any other past game in the series. Besides being an absolute favorite for memes with all the quotable lines and iconic scenes, San Andreas has a ridiculously active modding scene for a game that's over 15 years old now, which is probably a good thing because the definitive edition left a little to be desired. Number 8, League of Legends. Riot Games' League of Legends was released all the way back in October of 2009 and was inspired chiefly by Defense of the Ancients. It's since gone on to become one of the biggest video games ever made. The game revolves around players taking control of a hero and strategically battling it out against both CPU and player-controlled rivals in an attempt to destroy towers called Nexus before the other team. The game has been kept relevant by its explosive esports scene, which has revolutionized the way in which competitive gaming has been seen by the outside. For example, the League of Legends World Championships grew in 2019 to boast 100 million unique viewers. It's no surprise that 2019 saw the number of active players for the game rise up to 8 million concurrent players, and there's still plenty logging in each day. It's hard to imagine League having anywhere near the standing it has these days without its competitive core of players. What has helped the game stay alive for so long, besides its high skill ceiling and richly lucrative competitive scene, has been the way that the vast array of comic books, merchandise, skins, and Netflix TV series has kept its players engaged. Number 7, Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. With a 99% score on Metacritic at the time of writing, it's safe to say The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time hasn't lost its iconic status over the years. Being released back in November 1998 for the Nintendo 64 alongside fellow legendary titles Mario Kart 64 and Super Mario 64, the game once again follows the player-controlled Link as he navigates through Hyrule via time travel, puzzle solving, and finicky ocarina playing. In all, around 7.6 million copies of the game, with 1.14 of those coming from Japan, were sold. Very big numbers for a game from the 90s. However, even 20 years on from its initial release, Ocarina of Time is still alive and kicking thanks to a hardcore community of fans. Not only has the game received 2 re-releases on the GameCube and Nintendo 3DS, both of which featured a whole new harder version of the game called Master Quest, but the birth of streaming and speedrunning has helped keep interest in the game sky high. Ocarina of Time is one of the most popular speedrunning games out there, boasting a ridiculously stacked leaderboard and pulling in dozens of streamers on the likes of Twitch that fellow fans will watch religiously. Ocarina of Time is also reeled out at big gaming conventions and events, showcasing there's still plenty of enjoyment left in this Nintendo classic. Number 6. PacMan. Right up there with the most important and influential video games ever made, PacMan is a game that will never truly die out. At least hopefully not. Developed and released by Namco in 1980, the basic premise of a small yellow hockey puck-shaped circle working its way through a maze of dots with 4 ghosts chasing it was an instant hit. Perfect for the golden age of retro arcade machines, and it helped spawn a franchise that's still as heavily referenced today as it's ever been. As well as spawning a franchise that's expanded on the lore of Pac-Man and his baddie ghost enemies, the game's cultural standing and impact on its fans is what's really kept the Namco mascot alive and well. Brand awareness is everything in the world of business, and arguably only a handful of mascots have come close to matching the awareness of Pac-Man. Merchandising is a huge commodity for Pac-Man, with everything from hats, lunchboxes to bottle openers all available to purchase and carry around, all of which keep this yellow fellow and his original game right at the front of every gamer's mind. Number 5. CounterStrike Global Offensive. CounterStrike Global Offensive was released by Valve Corporation back in 2012, and though it received warm enough reviews and continued to help fuel the growing esports scene in the video game community, it wasn't until 6 years later in December of 2018, with the game switching to a free-to-play model, that the 4th installment in the Counter-Strike series really exploded to life. CSGO might not have the sales of Call of Duty or the cultural impact of Overwatch, but what it does have is easily one of the best competitive scenes found anywhere in the world of gaming, and it's only growing year by year. Streams of events and competitions where the game is being played by the highest level of skilled players regularly draw in tens of thousands of viewers. Events such as the ESL One Cologne have been able to boast a prize purse of $1 million, and the FPS title has been able to become one of the most lucrative games in the world thanks to the addition of skins to the game. January 2019 saw the game peak at 20 million monthly active users, double what it was able to register in 2016. But popularity really soared in the spring of 2020 when CSGO hit the 1 million concurrent player mark on Steam. Though this fairy tale story is sweet enough for a game 10 years old now, none of it would have been possible without the dedication of its core group of passionate fans that have stuck around from the beginning. Number 4. Starcraft II. Real-time strategy game Starcraft II Wings of Liberty was developed and produced by Blizzard Entertainment back in 2010 for Windows and Macs all around the world. The sequel to the 1998 original title, Starcraft II's base game was followed up by the release of 2 expansion packs, Hearts of the Swarm and Legacy of the Void, in 2013 and 2015. Then there was a DLC single-player mission pack, Starcraft II Nova Covert Ops, in November 2016. The game was released to a Metacritic score of 93% and became the fastest-selling real-time strategy game ever sold, with 3 million sales in the first month alone. Like CSGO, the game was moved to a free-to-play model in November of 2017, and that's contributed to helping keep the game alive from the grassroots player base up. Season 27 of the game's competitive season drew in a peak player base of 64,600 users. However, that had already risen up to 134,000 in 2017, and then up to 188,000 in 2018. Boasting a high skill ceiling and pulling in a hardcore group of passionate fans, Starcraft II has quietly become one of Blizzard's most player-driven successful titles. Number 3. Rainbow Six Siege. Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege was developed and released by Ubisoft as an online tactical FPS back in December 2015, but has somehow managed to carve out a purple patch for itself over the past year or so. With the usual attacker versus defender teams and various modes like hostage rescue, taking objective points, or bomb defusal, Rainbow Six places a large amount of emphasis on team collaboration and blasting away as much of the environment as they can. Ubisoft have gone to great lengths to make the game feel as immersive and real as possible, consulting with real-life counter-terrorism units and looking at historical sieges to bring a gritty amount of strategy to things. But even though reception to the game has always been solid enough, sales of the game were initially well below expectations following its release in 2015. Credit to Ubisoft, however, and the player base at the time, as they were able to work out a new free DLC and games as a service model that allowed both parties to remain happy, with Ubisoft able to cash in on the free-to-play model and players getting a continuous steady stream of high-quality content. With the game's players sticking with things, 2019 in particular saw a peak in players for Rainbow Six when it passed 45 million registered users across all platforms. Number 2. Supreme Commander. Released on Windows in February 2007 and for the Xbox 360 around a year and a half later in September 2008, Supreme Commander is a real-time strategy game developed by Chris Taylor and his company Gas Powered Games. Set in a time of futuristic and alien technologies, Supreme Commander sees players start off proceedings with just a single building unit called an ACU, and have to make use of quantum gateways, robotic blueprints, and impressive mech suits to build a strong enough army to combat their foes. Reviews for the game were almost universally positive, and Supreme Commander sold a reasonable amount of copies for a title that was lacking the big marketing budget so many rival franchises were granted. Support for the game's various technical mechanics and bugs continued until 2008, and the multiplayer backend was only shut down in 2012. However, the game has continued to maintain its strong player base even after the official support was pulled. Boasting one of the most professional and consistent modding player bases in the gaming sphere through its Forged Alliance Forever client, Supreme Commander continues to receive balancing out, updates, and custom community mods even today, helping to keep the gas-powered game's release just as relevant today as it was when it first came out. Number 1. World of Warcraft. Blizzard's World of Warcraft has been around for so long and been so culturally influential during its time in the mainstream that it's hard to imagine a world where the game isn't a household reference. Released in November 2004 as the fourth entry in the Warcraft franchise and its first venture into the world of massive online multiplayer games, World of Warcraft has gone through 9 high-profile expansions, established a lore and history that's made its way into plenty of other games and franchises, and established itself as the most impactful MMORPG ever made. In 2009, 5 years after the game's initial release, World of Warcraft hit 10 million players. By 2019, that number had reached 12 million, and Blizzard confirmed in February of 2020 that the game's subscriber base had doubled following the release of World of Warcraft Classic. However, all of these dungeons or expansions would have either never happened or would have been far less meaningful if it weren't for the millions of players around the world logging in and raiding away with their friends evening after evening over the years. That's the end of our list, but if you can think of any other old video games that are being kept alive by hardcore fans, let us know in that comment box. As always, I've been Jess from WhatCulture. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you like, you can come say hi to me on my Twitter account where I'm at Jess McDonald, but make sure you stay tuned to us here for plenty more great gaming lists.